According to former National Park Service biologist Tom Smith, don't go into bear country without a deterrent. I mean all bear country. Density B, insert the D word. You can't outrun them. You can't outwit them. You can't out anything them. You need a way to say to the bear, this far, no farther. Welcome to the Adventure Travel Show podcast. I'm your host, Kit Parks. On this podcast, we dig into the skills and tips that you need to maximize your enjoyment of your outdoor adventures. Today we're talking about hiking in bear country. You'll learn how to identify whether you're looking at a black bear or a grizzly bear, and hint, it's not about color. You'll learn how to prevent and minimize any unpleasant encounters with bears, and what to do if, unfortunately, a bear attacks. In short, you're going to learn best practices for hiking in bear country. About 15 years ago, my late husband Bill and I went to Alaska, and I was hiking in one of the parks on a beautiful trail. And at the time, I wasn't a hiker. I knew nothing about hiking, backpacking, bringing a day pack even. Never even thought at all about bears. Never even crossed my mind. I was just taking a nice little walk in the woods, and it was a beautiful walk. I saw all sorts of pretty things. And towards the end of the loop, as I made my way back to the park area, the park had hired one of the native peoples to carve out a totem pole. And so I was the only one there watching him work. And so we started chatting, and he asked how I was enjoying the park. I said, I loved it. I had this great walk, and his eyebrow raised. And he said, you realize you're in grizzly territory, and there's a lot of grizzlies around here. And I was like, no, never even thought about it. Never crossed my mind. So he teased me. He said, you'll smell them before you see them. And it wasn't until I started hiking and backpacking a few years later that I realized how silly I had been. And so what I want to do and what I'm trying to do with the show is to save you that same sharp learning curve and to teach you some of the skills that you need to know so that you can enjoy yourself in the wild, but do it safely and not be stupid and unprepared like I was in Alaska. Bear attacks are very rare, and rarer still if you're hiking in a group of 3 or more. So this show is not meant to scare you. In fact, bear encounters are a treat. The first time I ever saw a bear in the wild, I was with my girlfriend Wendy, and we were out at Pungo Lake, really, really rural, like in the middle of nowhere in eastern North Carolina, where the migratory birds come. And we went to go see the birds. This is a place where literally seems like all of Canada's birds come down to spend the winter. Snow geese, ducks, red-winged blackbirds, all sorts of birds. Flocks upon flocks. And it's just a magical place. And we're in the middle of nowhere. We hadn't seen a person all day, just walking down this, I guess it's a fire road. And all of a sudden, the bear saw us, a mama bear and her 2 cubs, darted in front of us on the road and down into the drainage ditch. And that's a treat. Generally speaking, bears, they want to keep their distance from you. So we considered it a privilege to see them. And again, they saw us before we even saw them. We weren't even thinking about bears. Literally, we were just looking for birds. I want you today to just be informed and not be scared of bears, but I want you to know what to do when you see one so that you have the proper response so that you do stay safe. To begin with, let's first learn how to determine what kind of bear that you're looking at because the responses are very different. The most common bear is the black bear. Its habitat ranges from Alaska, Canada, the lower 48, all the way down to central Mexico. They're common in the East Coast and the West Coast, and most likely that's what you'll come across. While they're generally black, they can be all sorts of colors from a blue-black to a cinnamon and even white. Black bears have taller ears, and they have, when you look at the profile of the bear, it's got a straight Romanesque kind of a nose, a snout, and their claws, if you happen to see paw prints in the mud, their much smaller claws are good for digging into logs, looking for insects, or for climbing trees. In contrast, a grizzly bear, sometimes called a brown bear, again, you can't determine the grizzly by the color. Their colors range anywhere from honey to black, although they're often brown. And they usually have a frosted, and that's where it gets its grizzly name, frosted tip, particularly up towards the shoulders and the head. That's kind of like lights up a little bit in the sun. So don't judge by the color. Instead, you're going to look for that distinct humpback shoulder that they have, where the black bear's is rather smooth and arched. The grizzly has a little humpback on it, like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And then also its snout is distinctly different. Picture taking a bowl and taking a scoop out of the snout of a black bear, and that you'll see a little indentation on the grizzly bear. So you don't have that nice straight nose that a black bear has. Their ears are different too. A grizzly's ears, instead of being tall and upright, are small and rounded, like teddy bear ears. Personally, I find the ears a little bit harder to distinguish, and so I generally go by the snout and looking for that shoulder. The shoulder is the easiest thing for me to see from a distance. The grizzly ranges from Alaska, Canada, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and they think maybe in the Cascades of Washington. You'll also find them in Russia. The grizzly bear claws are much larger. Some can be as long as a finger in a mature adult. If you're in the wild and you see some bear tracks, the way that you can determine the difference is take the paw pad and then draw an imaginary horizontal line across the top of the pad. If the baby toe of the paw is below that line, you're pretty much sure that it's a black bear paw print. And also black bear paws it's a more rounded paw pad versus the grizzly is more oblong. I'll put pictures of those at adventuretravelshowpodcast.com/bear. Bears have an incredible sense of smell. Bear brains are about a third of the size of human brains, but their olfactory, their smelling parts, is 5 times larger. It's been said that a bear can smell a rotting carcass 20 miles away and think, din din. Doesn't hurt that they have a 9-inch nose, and that's full of a lot more receptors. So how do we hike safely in bear country? The first thing you need to do is find out whether there are bears in your hiking area or not. If you're at a park, check with the rangers and ask about current sightings. In parks, too, the rangers will often close trails if there's bear activity, which that's usually going to be where there's a food source has just emerged, say berries. So if there's a little berry hedgerow, generally speaking, that's going to be very attractive to the bears. You want to avoid wearing any scented products. Think also shampoos, lotions, any stinky stuff. The smells attract the bears. Remember that big old snout. You don't want them to be curious about what you are. So strong scents do attract bears. And remember, I started this program with a quote from Tom Smith, and his best advice is just bring a deterrent. And the best deterrent is bear spray. And what's bear spray? It's a really heavy-duty pepper spray. Okay, and you don't want to just leave your bear spray in your pack because you're not going to say, excuse me, bear, I got to get my pack and get my bear spray. You want to get a holster and attach it to the front so whatever your dominant hand is, you can grab that quickly. And really important, make sure you've read the directions so you know how to engage it and what its distance is. Most do 30 feet. So how effective is bear spray? Dr. Smith in 2012 did a study and found of the 133 bear encounters using bear spray, only 3 people were injured, and all of them mildly. However, there were 269 bear encounters where people used a gun, and from that, the results were 17 dead people and a couple hundred dead bears. So, obviously, and counterintuitively, the bear spray is a much better choice versus a gun. Bear spray works up to 30 feet away, but it only lasts about 10 seconds, sometimes not even that long. So if you need to use it, say a bear's coming at you, make sure you're not spraying upwind because you don't want that pepper spray going in your eyes by accident. And you need to spray low so that the spray doesn't go over the bear's head. You got to get it in the eyes because that's what's going to deter them. So the spray works by temporarily burning their eyes, which is good because now they're going to think humans bad, not humans good, or humans tasty. And then as a further note, it does no good to quote-unquote preemptively spray your tent to keep bears away because the spray is scented, which does attract the bears. So you use it as the deterrent, as the chemical is used to temporarily injure the eyes and make the ability to see difficult so that you can quietly get away. Not as a barrier to keep bears away from your campground. Another good reason not to use a gun is in the lower 48 states of the United States, grizzly bears are considered an endangered species. So should you shoot and kill a grizzly bear, it is your responsibility to get the carcass out of there. And a grizzly bear can weigh up to 1,300 pounds, not likely to fit comfortably on your backpack. A black bear, in contrast, at their max is usually no more than 660 pounds. Before you go into a park, check with the park rangers to see what the regulations are for the park that you're visiting. For example, bear spray is not allowed in Yosemite because they only have black bears. However, in some parks, you're required to bring bear spray, and if a ranger stops you and you don't have it, you could be given a hefty fine. Best advice is don't hike solo in bear country. Rangers recommend at least a group of 3. According to the National Park Service, 91% of all bear attacks are of groups of 1 or 2 people, and most times the folks were off the trail. Therefore, stay on the trail and mind posted signs warning of any trail closings due to bear activity. Just in short, listen to the rangers. They're there to help you enjoy your visit and enjoy it safely. When walking on a trail, make noise such as, hey bear, or clap or sing. The key thing you're trying to do is not startle or surprise a bear. That's when you get in trouble. So this is really important. If you're coming up to a bend in a trail and you can't see the other side, that's when you make sure you're making the noise so the bear knows there's a human coming. You also want to do that if you're in a tall grassy area where the vegetation is very dense that you may not be able to see that a bear's resting there. The bear could be lying on the ground taking a nap or just resting that you can't see. So anytime you don't have full vision, you want to be making some kind of a noise. And forget about the bear bells that used to be popular. Turns out the bells attract the curiosity of some bears and they come to investigate what the noise is. So remember, make human noises. Hey bears, clap, sing. If you aren't hiking in a park and you know there's a lot of bear activity out there, use good judgment and avoid berry patches and other bear food favorites. You got to pay attention to your surroundings. And if you see a carcass, stay away. There could be bears in the area because carcasses are a favorite food. Also in a park, should you see a carcass, be sure to notify the ranger. They would like to know about it. And don't bring your dog. Bears and pets don't mix well. However, if you insist on bringing your dog, keep it on a leash. In addition, keep your kids in close sight. Don't let them scamper ahead of you. Keep them nearby where you can see them and close to you. Bears are most active at night, in the early morning, and late afternoon. So plan your hikes during solid daylight hours. Most important, store your food properly. If you're car camping, your food should be in a cooler in your car or you can hang it from a tree. If you're in a park where they have backcountry lockers, use them. That's what they're there for. If the facilities have poles or hooks, use them as well. However, if you're out on your own, use a bear canister, which are pretty darn effective and often mandatory in some parks, but they're bulky and heavy. If not required, you can also use a lightweight bear bag and preferably get an OPSAC 100% odor-proof and waterproof plastic bag that goes inside the bear bag. These you hang from a tree branch. You want to hang your bear bag on a tree about 100 yards downwind of your campsite. To hang a bear bag, you tie a rock to the rope. Now use a parachute cord about 50 feet, but if you have a cord about 50 to 100 feet, tie a rock to the bottom of the cord and then throw that rock over the branch and then lower that rock down to the ground. Then you take the rock off, tie your food bag to the rope where the rock was, and then using the other end, pull it up into the tree. You want the bag to be at least 4 feet from the trunk and preferably 10 or 15 feet higher. And then you tie your pulling end of the rope to a tree trunk or secure it somehow so that you can release it and get your food back in the morning or whenever it is that you need it. I remember the first time I had to hang a bear bag. My friends Jerry, Jane, and I were doing a 2-week section hike of the Appalachian Trail, my first long-distance backpacking trip. So we were out all day. We are tired. We finally find a place that can hold our campsite of 3 tents. And so now we're trying to hang the food. And we're just pooped. And so we're trying. I just did not have the strength. None of us had the strength to throw the rock over the branch. And we're having problems even finding good trees. And we're like, what we need is a good, strong arm. And I swear, good Lord saved us. Here comes a thru hiker by the name of Tinder Fungus. And Tinder Fungus, if you're listening to this, you saved our butts that night. So he looked at us. He could see that we were struggling. He tossed the rock over for us. And we had our first successful bear bag hang. And in that bear bag, you want to put all scented things, not just your food. You put your food, you put your toiletries like toothpaste, shampoo, anything with scents. You want to put those in there. Your chapstick, anything that's got a scent to it. And even when you clean out your dishes and all that, take a mesh strainer, a little piece of screen or something like that, and pour your dishwater through the strainer and collect those food scraps and throw that in your trash bag. Put your trash in there. And I keep my trash in a gallon Ziploc bag. If you use camp soap, use a minimal amount because, again, that probably has a scent. I personally just use a little boiling water to sanitize stuff and don't use soap at all. The thing is, when we're careless and a bear tastes and learns to crave human foods, we're often giving that beautiful bear a death sentence. Because if they start getting attracted to campsites and trash cans and all that, they either get relocated or unfortunately killed. One thing to note, neither black bears or grizzly bears are attracted to menstrual periods. However, polar bears are. So be careful if you're up in the Arctic. Whenever possible, you want to cook your meals at least 100 yards downwind from your campsite. That way, if a bear comes to investigate the scents, you're upwind, you're not anywhere near the food or the smells. And be on the lookout for bear indicators. These could be their paw prints in the mud, claw marks on trees. A lot of times the bears, I think they're either marking their territory or what, but you'll see where they've stood up on their hind legs and then scratched down on tree trunks. Look for upturned logs that a black bear might be looking for insects. Same thing with rolled over rocks. Also look for bear poop, otherwise known as scat. It's a big old blob. So what do we do when we see a bear? Most of the time, seeing a bear, like I said earlier, is a treat. But you need to keep your distance. Recommendations are about 75 yards or 70 meters for a black bear and 100 yards or 90 meters for a grizzly. So just give the bear a wide berth and enjoy. The first time I saw a grizzly in the wild when I was not in a car, I was up at Glacier National Park and been hiking that morning on a beautiful lakeside trail, brought our lunch, and it was a little chilly even though it was summertime. So I went and I sat on a log out in the sunshine, just enjoying this beautiful glacial lake and with the trees and the hills behind it. And then out of the woods comes a grizzly down to the water. And I was like, oh, and there's a bunch of people that had been down at the lake. And so, I kind of did this little pointy thing. And so everybody looks and we all see it. And we're all excited because it's like I said, it's a treat to see a bear. And this bear was probably at this point, maybe 1,000 feet away. So it was a good distance away. Sure, it knew we were there because there's a lot of us, but it wasn't paying us any mind, but it was slowly walking towards us. Once it got maybe like 400 feet away, then we started all backing up, and then slowly we backed back onto the trail away for it to give the bear its berth, and then eventually it went back up into the hills, and so our little show was over. But that was a real treat, and one of the highlights of my trip up there. Like I said, generally bears are afraid of humans and they're going to run away, or they're just going to wander away, particularly if you're in an area where bears are hunted. Your goal, remember, is just don't surprise a bear. How you react if you encounter a bear depends on the kind of bear. Remember the markers we discussed. To me, the easiest indicator is that big hump on a grizzly and that snout. If it's super straight, you're looking at a black bear. If you see the hump, you're looking at a grizzly. That's my easiest markers, and they're the easiest to see from a distance. If a bear sees you and stands up, most of the time it's just simply checking you out to see if you're a threat or not. A bear attacks for 3 reasons: predatory, territory, or protective reasons. And the protective, you want to never get between a mama bear and her cubs. That's going to be your most dangerous situation. If you find yourself in that situation, slowly back away and if you see cubs and you don't see the mama, don't go near them because they're cute little cubs, because mama's around somewhere and she's not going to be happy to see you. If you find yourself with the bear and you're too close, you got to remember 3 things. Number 1, stand your ground. I know you're going to be scared if it's too close, but running might bring out a predatory response. And also for this reason, you never want to trail run in bear territory. And in some parts, the big cats fall into this category for the same reason. So number 1, if you're close, stand your ground. And then number 2, get your bear deterrent ready. And ideally, we want to be using that bear spray. And then number 3, if the bear is close, slowly wave your hands over your head to look larger. Yell, "Hey bear," let it know that you're human. If you're around your kitchen, bang pots and pans. Gets really close, start throwing rocks. And usually that's going to do the trick. They, generally speaking, do not want to mess with you. And most people fear grizzlies more than black bears. But if you're attacked, it's usually the black bear that's going to get you. A grizzly would more often just do a bluff charge. And also, remember this is really important. If you are being attacked and it's a black bear, remember this: a black bear only attacks for predatory reasons. So it's going to try to get you. So if you are attacked by a black bear, first you use your bear spray, and if that doesn't work, you fight back. You punch him in the eyes, you punch him in the nose, you fight for your life, because that is actually going to be what you're doing. And remember, I'm going over this to inform you, not to scare you. An attack is really, really, really rare. Grizzly behavior is different. If a grizzly sees you, it's likely going to stand up on its hind legs just to check you out. In that case, for a grizzly, just speak calmly. Again, you're letting it know you're human, and back up slowly. You don't want to look like a threat. A grizzly might do a bluff charge, and this is going to scare you to death, but when the grizzly is bluffing, its ears are up. Remember this, the ears are up, and it's going to huff. It's going to make all these noises. And as terrifying as it's going to be, stand your ground. So it's going to run at you and then stop, and you stand there. And your heart is going to be on the other side of the mountain, but that's what you got to do. And usually that's going to be the end of it. And after the bluff charge, again, you can once again slowly back up, and the bear is probably going to wander its way. You're backed up, and at the end of it, you're basically just going to have a cool story to tell your friends. Now, on the other side of the coin, let's say the grizzly has its ears down. Remember the bluff charge? The ears are up. If the ears are down, its head is low, and it's quiet. It's not making any noises. Now, you've got to get ready. Unlike the first case, the bluff charge where the ears are up, if the grizzly is going to attack you, its ears are down, its head is down, nice and low, and it's quiet. None of that huffing noises. It's not doing any bluffs. It's not trying to scare you off. It's going to charge you. This is when you use your bear spray. You're about to be attacked. Control your panic. You got to make sure you're not spraying too soon. You got to wait till the bear is at least 30 feet away, and then aim low because you don't want to spray over his head. And just remember, that bear spray is super, super effective. Of course, use the same technique of the bear spray with the black bear, and you want to try that first. But remember, if he gets to the spray or the spray doesn't work for whatever reason, with the black bear, you fight. But if a grizzly is charging you, with its head down, ears down, and it's quiet, you stand still first, and then you use the bear spray if that doesn't work. Now, if you've ignored my advice and you're not bringing bear spray, then unlike the black bear attack when you are fighting with all your might, with the grizzly bear, you play dead. And the best way to do that is lie face down on the ground. Hopefully your backpack is on your back. Spread your legs, and then place your hands over your head like you're being arrested. And this way, with your legs spread and your elbows spread, it's going to be harder for the grizzly to turn you over. That way, your backpack's going to get the brunt of it, and generally, it's going to do like one swipe or one bite, and then it's out of there. Alternately, if you roll up into a cannonball, he'll probably take one bite and be out of there. And I want to remind you, in all these situations, it's extremely rare. When my friend Venti and I were out in Glacier National Park, we were lucky to have several grizzly sightings. Most of them from the safety of our car when we were driving around, and we were in what they refer to as a bear jam, where folks stopped to watch the bears from their cars, much to the distress of the rangers. We had multiple sightings of grizzlies, and it was such a treat. But seeing the one in the wild when we were sitting at the lake, that remains one of my favorite memories of that whole trip. And remember, bears aren't stupid. They live in some of the most beautiful places on Earth. So go out and enjoy the scenery, but just be bear smart. If you follow these guidelines and pack along your common sense as well as your bear spray, you're going to be just fine. I want to finish up with one last story. Back on that Appalachian Trail section hike I did with Jerry and Jane, one night when we generally try to look for a campsite starting around 4 o'clock, we just couldn't find a suitable site because we've got 3 tents, and for whatever reason, we were in a stretch that there just weren't good flat areas to camp. And so we're hiking. Maybe in my memory, it's like 6 o'clock. And finally, we see this subpar area that we decide just to make do. We're done. We're tired. We just want to eat and go to bed. And so because it wasn't the best site, we're scattered a little bit more than we normally were. And after dinner, everybody rolls into their sleeping bags. And for whatever reason, as tired as I was, I couldn't fall asleep. And so around 11 o'clock, I'm still awake. And I hear Jerry outside of my tent. And I was like, why is Jerry coming over in front of my tent to go to the bathroom? She should go in front of her own tent. And I don't think a whole lot about it, other than I think it's strange. And eventually I fall asleep. So the next morning I get up and go to relieve myself where I had done the night before. And there is bear scat. So apparently, quote unquote, Jerry the night before was not Jerry, but a bear. And the bear had just wandered through our campsite, checked us out. We'd followed all the rules. We had not eaten near the campsite. Our bear bags were hung far away and were up safely in the tree, and everything was fine. And generally speaking, that's going to be your typical bear encounter. That, and hopefully from a safe distance with your camera. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If so, please share it with your friends. On the Adventure Travel Show website, adventuretravelshowpodcast.com. You'll see more information about hiking in bear country with photos and diagrams. And like always, I prepare a PDF on all episodes. You get them absolutely free if you sign up for my monthly email, and note that I said monthly. And also note, I don't sell your name or spam you, I promise. In this email, you'll also find other tips and deals not mentioned on the show. And remember, this podcast is a companion podcast to the Active Travel Adventures podcast. That means each week you can add a little adventure to your life. So while this podcast teaches you the skills, the tips, and the tricks for adventure travel, on alternate Thursdays on the Active Travel Adventures podcast, you'll learn about destinations and learn about new places to add to your adventure bucket list. Please let me know what you think of the new show. Pop me an email at kit@activetraveladventures.com. I'd love to hear from you, and if you've got any show ideas of things you'd like me to cover, be sure to let me know. Thanks for listening. Until next time, this is Kit Parks. Adventure on.